Nearly 100 Minnesota mayors say they are deeply concerned and frustrated by the fraud and unchecked spending from state officials. They say the state's $18 billion surplus has disappeared, and now Minnesota projects $3 billion in deficits in 2028. Their letter goes on to say, as mayors, we see firsthand how these decisions ripple outward. Our state owes it to our citizens to practice responsible fiscal management and to stop taxing our families, seniors, and businesses out of Minnesota. We urge the legislature to course correct and to remember that every dollar you manage belongs not to the capital, but to the people of Minnesota.
Joining us now is the Brewer Group CEO, Jack Brewer. Lived in Minnesota for many years of his adult life. Jack, what's your reaction to this letter?
You know, I've said it for years, unfortunately. Minnesota has become the capital of chaos. You know, liberals have sat there and watched this beautiful city and this great state just become the laughing stock of America. At some point, you have to do something about it. I mean, no human being could have the perspective and the thoughts and the liberalism in their mind like a Tim Walz, like a Keith Ellerson. You expect these type of moves because they've been allowed to do whatever they want. I mean, to promote some of the things that they promote, you understand exactly what's down deeper in their soul. And so you can't put anything by them. And so I don't know why the citizens of Minnesota would have ever trusted a man that puts tampons in kids' locker rooms and promotes the things that he promotes. And so, you know, it's just sad to see that Minnesota now has become literally the laughing stock of America.
Yeah, well, we were originally told that it was $1 billion in fraud, and now we're learning that could be just the tip of the iceberg, and there are reports now that say that it could be upwards of $9 billion in fraud. That's taxpayer dollars. And House Minority Whip Tom Emmer is also saying this about the WALZ administration and their knowledge of fraud, saying, quote, I think as they start to peel this onion back, which just seems to be getting deeper and deeper and broader, whoever was responsible needs to be held accountable. My personal opinion is there is no way that $1 billion plus got its way out of the WALZ administration without someone in the administration being aware and or complicit. What do you think about that?
I think he's dead on. I mean, there's a special place in heaven for Republicans in Minnesota who have stood the line and stood up to these liberals. I mean, it's really sad when you see a guy like Tim Walz and what he's been allowed to do. I mean, not just Minnesotans. I mean, this is American taxpayer dollars, a lot of it. And so, you know, it's just wrong. You know, so many people locked up in prisons and jails all over the country. I will go into prisons and jails all the time, and people that get locked up for much less than that across the world. These liberals will promote and fight and scratch for illegal immigrants, but they don't say anything about all those Americans, those millions of Americans that are impacted by the criminal justice system from doing much less than people like Tim Walz. And so we have a responsibility in this country to have, you know, fair justice systems and not to have 2- and 3-tier justice systems where these politicians like Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz can go around and rob and steal, but you know, folks that don't have the means to get lawyers are locked up in jail. We're responsible as Americans to stand up and make an example out of these people in Minnesota.
And that last comment ties in nicely with your Christmas message and what your organization is doing this Christmas season. Tell us about it, Jack.
Praise God, man. We are out helping those children who have fathers impacted by the criminal justice system, fathers in prison. Man, we've been able to, you know, wrap and deliver over 1,000 toys to so many kids that are in need across this country. We've also gone and flown gifts to Jamaica to help some of those babies right now as they're recovering from the hurricane. But you know, it's really amazing to see, you know, these men that you see on the screen that are delivering these toys. All of those men have spent time in prison. I was Christmas caroling last night with about 7 men, and then I looked around and I asked them, how many years if you calculated it? Almost 300 years in prison these men have spent. And so they're there now spreading the love, spreading the joy to other kids that don't get to wake up and see their dad in the morning. And so it really is a special time, man, and we're living in a special country, and we have have to also love our brothers and sisters here in America and protect them and do the things that we should be doing to make sure that equality is really is what we say it is. And equality meaning for everybody to have the same opportunities here in our country if they want to work hard for, if they want to rehabilitate. And so that's our message this Christmas is don't forget the lost. Like the Word of God says in Hebrews 13:3, visit those in prison as if you're with them in prison.
Wow. Amen. What a beautiful message that is. It's never too late to turn your life around. And clearly with that 300 years among 7 men, you proved just that. Jack, thank you so much for joining us this morning. What a beautiful message. Merry Christmas to you and all. Okay, so major fallout now over the Minnesota fraud scandal that keeps on growing. Nearly 100 mayors are voicing concerns about the state's fiscal policies, writing to the governor there, Tim Walz. Fraud, unchecked spending, and inconsistent fiscal management in St. Paul have trickled down to our cities. Our state owes it to our citizens to practice responsible fiscal management and to stop taxing our families, seniors, and businesses out of Minnesota. And now the federal government is getting involved here. House Oversight Committee, it's widening its probe, inviting state lawmakers to come testify and other federal departments to investigate. So let's bring in now Chairman James Coper. He leads the charge over at Oversight, and he joins us now. Good morning to you. Tell us about who you're bringing in, who you want to see on Capitol Hill, and what questions do you want to ask them?
Well, the most important people are the state whistleblowers, the state employees who put that tweet out that we all are familiar with a few weeks ago that alerted America to the massive fraud. These state employees also allege that they had warned both Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison for years that this fraud was occurring, and yet nothing was taking place. So we're going to bring the state employees in. We're going to get their sworn testimony. We appreciate their bravery in coming forward. We're also going to bring in state lawmakers and Minnesota mayors because the walls are caving in on Tim Walz. This massive amount of fraud is affecting and impacting every citizen of Minnesota because they're having to cut services because so much of the money for social programs was wasted and defrauded by this Somali population. So these are the people we're going to bring in. We're going to try to identify who was responsible for this. We're going to try to identify banks that we can subpoena their bank records so we can follow the money to see how much was taken, who took it, and then who do we need to hold accountable, and hopefully we'll have some criminal referrals at the end of the investigation.
What is so fascinating about this, Chairman Comer, is how no one knew. Or did they know? This is an op-ed from the Wall Street Journal here, asking, I think, a pretty fair question. When nearly $250 million can vanish from one state program before anyone truly notices, taxpayers are justified in asking who was supposed to be minding the store. The uncomfortable answer is that no one elected by the people held that responsibility or held the mandate and clout to stop the scheme. You know, your whip, Tom Emmer, says there's no way that Governor Tim Walz didn't know or somebody in his administration didn't have an inkling that there was something going on. Do you agree with that? And how do you prove that?
I agree completely. Look, Tom Emmer was a state legislator in Minnesota before he came here. He has the pulse of Minnesota. He communicates regularly with Minnesota state legislators and Minnesota state employees. They've been talking about this for years. There was a congressman that came in from Minnesota when I came in 9 years ago to Congress named Jason Lewis. He was talking about the massive fraud from the Somali population 9 years ago. So this is something that's been talked about in Minnesota for a long time. The Minnesota media is very liberal, so they're never going to write anything bad about a beloved Democrat like Tim Walz or Keith Ellison. So finally, the state employees have stepped forward publicly and talked about this massive amount of fraud. And I can tell you from our preliminary discussions with these state employees, it is a significant amount of money. And remember, Minnesota isn't a big state. So when you're talking about billions of dollars for a small state, that is a significant percentage of the budget for welfare in that state.
Should the governor resign? Are you calling on him to resign?
Well, not yet. He deserves due process, and we're going to give him due process. One of the things he said in the last 48 hours was that the Oversight Committee didn't need to worry about this investigation, that he would take care of it. I mean, no one in America believes that. That is a joke. we are going to investigate this. The key to a good congressional investigation is having whistleblowers. And fortunately for us, we have some state employees who have bravely stepped forward. We're going to get them under oath, and they're going to tell us everything they know, and we're going to go from there. Wherever the investigation leads us, we will go. We're going to try to do it as rapidly as possible. But I think at the end of the day, the American taxpayers, and especially the taxpayers in Minnesota, are going to be sick at their stomach, and Tim Walz is going to have a lot of explaining to do.
Okay. Chairman Comer, thanks for joining us on this holiday week. We hope you have a very safe and
been blowing the whistle and alerting the governor, and he's turned a blind eye. We're going to follow the money and figure out who all was involved in this fraud.
Minnesota's Democrat governor under fire. Nearly 100 mayors sounding the alarm, warning of a looming financial meltdown, all tied to a massive fraud scheme that prosecutors say could blow past $9 billion. Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel has the story. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Julia. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer from Minnesota says the scandal is mushrooming, and he argues Minnesota's governor has been slow to act.
We've been trying to sound the alarm on this fraud for the last 3 years. The press in this state have literally been complicit with Tim Walz and his administration. They've refused to hold them accountable. Here's how ridiculous it is. Last Friday, Maria, Tim Walz created a new position in his state government to go after fraud. 7 years too late.
The letter from nearly 100 Minnesota mayors to state leaders on the fiscal direction of the state says, quote, fraud, unchecked spending, and inconsistent fiscal management in St. Paul have trickled down to our cities, reducing our capacity to plan responsibly, maintain infrastructure, hire and retain employees, and sustain core services without overburdening local taxpayers. Vice President J.D. Vance is also blasting the Minnesota governor.
And it's why we are outraged at the injustice of Tim Walz allowing Somalian immigrants to defraud that program to the tune of billions of dollars. It ought to go to Americans, because that's who it's there for.
With some suggesting the fraud in Minnesota-run Medicaid services could be as much as $9 billion, Governor Walz says that is overblown.
I'll take accountability for it, but what you're seeing here is you're seeing a weaponization. We'll continue to fix it. They're going to continue to come up with numbers that don't have it there, and it's sensationalized. I don't expect anything different from this administration.
Oversight Chairman James Comer is promising to follow the money with his investigation to figure out who all was involved in this fraud. Julie?
All right, Mike Emanuel, thank you so much.
We'll see how it goes. And there is some new pressure today on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, as the feds say that fraud in his state could total $9 billion, up from the estimate of $1 billion. This thing is just absolutely exploding. We heard the $1 billion estimate a few weeks ago.
The magnitude of the fraud in Minnesota cannot be overstated. It's staggering amounts of money that have been lost. But it's not just about the money that's been stolen and wasted. This is a problem that's caused all of us to question what kind of state we live in.
So now almost 100 Minnesota mayors have written to Governor Walz and state lawmakers, quote, fraud, unchecked spending, and inconsistent fiscal management in St. Paul have trickled down to our cities, reducing our capacity to plan responsibly, maintain infrastructure, hire and retain employees, and sustain core services without overburdening local taxpayers. Two of those mayors are going to join us in just a moment. But first to Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel, reporting live from D.C. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Martha. Yeah, the chairman of the powerful House Oversight Committee is demanding answers. James Comer says his committee is expanding its investigation into massive fraud and money laundering in Minnesota's social services programs. Comer's asking for records from the Treasury and Justice Departments, including suspicious activity reports and interviews with state officials. Comer says honest whistleblowers were ignored.
The state employees who were the first to blow the whistle on the fraud, they claim that they notified Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison years ago. So this has been going on for years. The state employees have been blowing the whistle and alerting the governor, and he's turned a blind eye.
With some suggesting the fraud in Minnesota could be as much as $9 billion, Governor Walz says that's an exaggeration.
I'll take accountability for it, but what you're seeing here is you're seeing a weaponization. We'll continue to fix it. They're going to continue to come up with numbers that don't have it there, and it's sensationalized. I don't expect anything different from this administration.
The letter from those Minnesota mayors notes, quote, our state owes it to our citizens to practice responsible fiscal management and to stop taxing our families, seniors, and businesses out of Minnesota. Chairman Comer says the governor was aware but did not act because he did not want to offend Minnesota's Somali population. Martha?
Mike, thank you very much. Let's bring in two of the nearly 100 mayors who wrote to Governor Walz and state lawmakers about fraud. Like most Minnesota mayors, they're nonpartisan when they run for mayor. But Jackson Purfirst from Cross Lake has volunteered for the RNC, and Andrea Zupancic from Babbitt is running for state Senate as a Republican. Welcome to both of you. It's great to have you with us today. I just want to put up on screen here, this is the $9 billion in Minnesota fraud schemes. So on the left-hand side is what this money was supposed to be for. And we'll go tight on here so you can see it. Feeding children, helping recovering addicts, helping disabled adults. This was during COVID for the most part. But the money went to wire transfers to China and East Africa, a villa in the Maldives, luxury vehicles, and designer jewelry. You can see the list here. But you hear what Governor Walz is saying, Mayor Purfirst. He's saying, you know, this is up to like the local, the local management here. And he's taking the blame off of himself as governor. What do you say to that?
Martha, that is just absurd. I mean, Minnesotans have been fleeced to the tune of $9 billion. This is done from fraud right out of the Minnesota Capitol in St. Paul, as well as the policies that are being championed and brought across the finish line by the legislature. Both the legislature and the governor are at fault for the fraud and the constant policies that are taxing Minnesotans.
You know, let's put up Minnesota's rank among key growth indicators. Very anemic and devastating growth numbers actually across the state that have happened under this governor. But Mayor Zupancic, let me ask you about something that Mike Emanuel reported at the end there, this question about whether or not the governor looked the other way on potentially $9 billion of fraud because he didn't want to point out that the majority of those who were accused and then convicted in these cases were from the Somali community. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't understand what difference that makes to anyone else. How would anyone else be approached or confronted if they stole money from someone? They would all be acknowledged and have to go forward with the consequences of their actions. You know, we're sitting here bearing the brunt of everything: tax hikes, gas taxes, property taxes, boating taxes, gas taxes. We can't go anywhere. We can't go fishing. And he's afraid to offend someone. Well, what about me? I know my town, we're all offended that we're paying for all of this fraud to go on, and it's just coming out now when they've known about it for years. What's going to happen now? And let's just call it what it is. It's stealing. It's not, it's stealing. You're stealing from the state of Minnesota. You're stealing from the taxpayers that make this state the great state that it is. And how are we going to recoup from that?
I want to play this. This is Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison put out this video on Friday talking about how effective he's been in fighting scams in Minnesota. Watch this.
Scammers think Minnesotans are easy targets. They are wrong. When scammers go after our seniors, students, or families, I step in fast and we shut them down. If you plan to scam Minnesotans, think again. You're stepping into the wrong ring.
You know, who thought this was a good idea, Mayor Purfirst? This went out on Friday.
You know what, Martha, I really have no clue. I wish that Attorney Keith Ellison would get back to work. I mean, this is insane. He is not doing anything to protect Minnesotans that are getting fleeced by Governor Walz and the current policies coming out of the Capitol.
All right, we'll see where this goes. He would like to win another governor's race, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you both, mayors from Minnesota.
Thank you, hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.